As expected, Alex Palou won the pole here for the Indy GP, but the race itself did not go how we expected here. As the sun sets at IMS, I'm Zion Brown on IndyStar TV to wrap up a weekend that was a lot more hectic and confrontational than I think a lot of people here expected. As you already know by now, Christian Lundgaard got his second career win in this race, and it really boiled down to two inflection points, I would say, that occurred in this race. The first is lap one, turn one, and Christian Lundgaard, who qualified out of the front, was able to somehow avoid the mess that happened, really, as Felix Rosenqvist locked up and caused a multiple car crash. Rosenqvist, Dixon, and Pato O'Ward were really the three drivers who you may have expected to contend for this race at the beginning of the day, whose days were ruined by that. None of the drivers in that accident had to exit the race at that moment, but none of them were able to make their way back toward the top of the field, and so those three drivers had their day derailed by that. Alex Palou was able to stay out of that, and so was Christian Lundgaard. That ended up leading to the win. And then the second inflection point that really threw Palou's day off was after about 20 laps, Alex Rossi had a hybrid issue right at the start-finish line, and his car completely shut off. When that happened, I thought it was a full course yellow. A lot of people around thought it was a full course yellow, and apparently Alex Palou and Kyle Kirkwood both thought it was a full course yellow. They stopped the pit. It's not what ended up happening. It was only a yellow in that area. It wasn't a full course yellow. Everybody else was on green, and everywhere else was on green, rather. Everybody else really stayed out there and was able to maintain their pace in all the other spots besides where that happened, and that kind of led to that. Alex Rossi got out the car and was furious for two reasons. At the hybrid, he's been vocal about not liking this hybrid system. He blamed Honda when talking to his team in the timing stand. Honda, of course, was the bigger proponent, bigger than Chevy was at least, in getting the hybrid system introduced into IndyCar 2 years ago, and Rossi let that be known. And then he hopped out of his car, which actually did force it to be a full course yellow. He threw his steering wheel out and hopped out the car before the medical team was able to get to him. That eventually caused a full course yellow, but not when we thought it would. So that Rossi thing really affected quite a lot. Kyle Kirkwood, who has struggled in this race, wasn't in the Fast Six, really had a strong effort to try to get near the front of the race, but that hurt him, and then it hurt him also later on, yet again with Andretti Global, an issue with a pit stop taking longer than it should have, and that really eliminated any chance Kirkwood had. Palou, from that moment on, was really just behind it and couldn't play enough catch-up, couldn't really time his pit stops up correctly throughout the rest of the race, and that hurt Palou. I think if we would have gotten another big caution, then maybe we would have seen a chance for Palou to utilize push to pass and just the overall speed of his car to get toward the front. That never occurred, which leads us to the front of the pack, which this race ended up coming down between Christian Lundgaard and David Malukas. Malukas was ahead for a good portion of it, but then finally, lap 68, turn 4, Christian Lundgaard was able to make the pass. Malukas barely had any push to pass after that point. Lundgaard with just an excellent pass. He said it probably looks better than it was, but I saw it. I thought it was a great pass, and it led to Lundgaard getting his second career win. Got to talk to him and Tony Kanaan after, and they both just talked about how much they like to win and how much they want to win, and how that was the goal when Christian Lundgaard originally came over to this team to start last year, and just how that pressure, Lundgaard likes the pressure, and he lived up to it today. Lundgaard all season long has spoken about it multiple times. He went back to Barber even when you could have blamed his pit crew, and surely many people did, and even they had to change one of the tire changers after what happened in Barber. But even after that, Christian Lundgaard said, look, that was part of why we lost this race to Alex Palou, but if I qualified better, we still would have had a chance to win. Well, he finally gets to the Fast Six today, started P4, as I mentioned, stayed out of the trouble with the Rosenqvist issue, and he ends up getting his first win with Arrow McLaren and just the second of his career to begin May. One other odd thing that happened today that I was down on pit lane and did not witness happening, but Romain Grosjean and Marcus Armstrong had a confrontation. I'm not sure what caused the confrontation. I tried to figure that out, and nobody was able to give me a concrete answer, but Armstrong finished 11th in the race. Grosjean finished 21st, so they weren't really side by side for a good portion of this race. Maybe they were earlier in the race. That could have been what happened. And then also their pit boxes were 10 places away from each other here at IMS. So it couldn't have really been something in pit lane either. Nobody is completely sure why it happened, but Armstrong's pit crew was very, very protective of Armstrong. They, for whatever reason, I think they thought that Grosjean was going to try to punch Marcus Armstrong. No punch happened, at least that anybody captured. I don't believe a punch happened at all, but eventually they still got face-to-face and talked it out. Armstrong still didn't really understand what was happening, and Grosjean, it seemed to have cooled down a little bit, but a weird confrontation. Like I said, one of the more confrontational weekends we've had in IndyCar in quite some time. Between what we saw on Thursday with Kirkwood and Pato O'Ward and Alex Palou going at it about push to pass. I didn't even mention that Pato O'Ward and Alex Palou argued about push to pass again this morning after qualifying, as those guys started P1 and P2 on the front row, so they came into the pressers. They got asked about it again, and they went after it again, and Pato kind of made a slick comment about the gray area that Palou was able to utilize in Long Beach, and he said, well, maybe that's why I'm not winning the races, because he's using that quote-unquote gray area. But those two went at it. And it's just been an odd weekend here at IMS, and one of the more entertaining races we've had on the road course here in the time that it has been here. But once again, Christian Lundgaard gets the win. Doesn't make a huge jump in the standings. Goes from 5th to 4th. He passes Pato. Pato was also passed by Joseph Newgarden. Newgarden finished 4th, so he's now 5th in the overall season standings. Alex Palou still finished P5, maintaining that first spot. P9 for Kyle Kirkwood. He stays in 2nd as well. And David Malukas, as we mentioned, finishing P2. He stays in 3rd in the season standings. Graham Rahal with his 4th top 10 finish of the year, his 2nd podium. Once again on a road course. I didn't get to mention him yet, but he finished P3 to round things out. But it's Christian Lundgaard's day, the first win for Arrow McLaren since being back in 2020. That's not from Pato O'Ward. It had been only Pato wins that this team had since 2020. Finally, somebody else in their driver lineup brings home a win, and it's Christian Lundgaard. I have more on Lundgaard's race and his performance today. And of course, everything I just talked about there pretty much is on our site. So make sure to go to IndyStar.com/motor.sports for more. But for now, I'm Zion Brown, IndyStar TV.